Thanks.
Hey, Martha. Hey, Ramona. Jane Avenger is lurking somewhere, but maybe she will reveal herself before too long. Hey, Kirkendalls. Martha. Hey, Ann. Good to see you.
Good morning.
That's a pretty background.
At the Sea of Galilee.
No, this is Lake Norman. This is the view from our house. I can put the Sea of Galilee on if you want. No, this is a little personal.
And we really have enjoyed this Sunday school class.
Oh, well, thanks.
I really appreciated all the work you put into this to make it interactive and really interesting.
I appreciate that. I have enjoyed it myself. Really have. Getting to see people and interact a little bit. So
We
thank
have
you.
certainly enjoyed it too. We thank you for all your hard work.
Oh, I'm glad. Well, y'all better watch out because you don't know what today's going to bring. 3 of the 4 weeks were.
Sure.
Hey, Cecil.
Good morning, Ann.
How do we get all of you guys? We've just got a little strip of 4 of you, 5 of you.
If you'll go to the lower left-hand corner.
Or the right-hand corner.
What does it work on either corner?
What?
Sometimes
Of your where you see us.
If you touch it.
Of your Zoom screen.
Participants.
You can, or you can go to the edge and just stretch. You'll see the arrows appear and you can just click and drag your edge of your screen and you can.
On it. Everybody. Click on the picture.
Got full view, but that doesn't do it. Oh,
do you have a little view up in your right hand corner?
Yeah, view, speaker view and gallery view.
Okay, try gallery view. Click on that. And who do you see now?
5 people.
Ew, which 5?
We're not going to tell.
Jason, the helper. Help us, Jason.
If you go to gallery view, everybody shows up, I think.
If you put it on full screen, gallery view.
Well, it depends on the device you're using too.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah,
there we go.
it.
Thank you.
Success. Takes a village.
It does.
I've mine. Hey, Allison.
I'd like to welcome everybody this morning. It's great to be in this final session with Ann. I so appreciate all of your efforts and teaching and sharing enlightened films with us. It's been wonderful. Before we go to Ann, though, I'd like to mention 2 things. One is there's a survey on the same email that had the link for this class. And if you would fill that out, we'd really appreciate it. And then I'd like to introduce Bill Cockrell, who will talk about next week's class before Ann starts. Thanks so much, Ann.
Thanks, Glenette. Next week, we're going to try something a little different, very different from what we've had for the last 4 weeks. We are going to be discussing sermons, a sort of not quite arbitrary selection of sermons from the 20th century, a total of 6 over 3 weeks. I'm not sure we can cover all of them, but we will give it a try. The important thing to note is that this is going to be a discussion and not a lecture, which means that you need to read the sermons before the Sunday school class. If you don't do that, you're not going to find it very interesting. You may not find it interesting anyway, but you certainly won't if you don't read the sermons first. So if you don't have the sermons yet, you can get them via John's link, or you can pick up a hard copy, as I understand, at the church. But we will try to cover the first 2 sermons next week. And as I say, come prepared with your reflections, your questions, your comments about both the content of the sermon and how effective you think it is when you read it. So I'll look forward to that. I'm hoping to learn a lot from you. So it's on your shoulders, folks. Thanks.
No pressure. Bill Cockrell, will you come to my classes and just give that a
No.
little intro every time? Yeah, discussions do not work if you haven't done the reading. Yeah. I believe what Bill just gave y'all is a little bit of the fear of the Lord. That's what we call it in the trade. So let's see now. Let me share my screen with you for a moment or two. I hope you can see that. Welcome back, everybody. And I appreciate you being here. And I have enjoyed this so much, getting to see you all and hear your thoughts. And our conversations have really stuck with me over this past month. And we're at the end of February. I could not be happier about this. So let's move along. I want you to do a little Menti this morning. Some of you have done this before. And so let's get our fingers working and we're going to learn a lot about each other in the next couple of minutes. I hope. Is everybody finding the questionnaire?
Nothing happens.
Where do
Nothing
we find it?
happening. Oh, somebody's making something work.
Is
We're
the
gonna
first
have-
question
Clean water.
okay? The first question is, what are you drinking? Is that correct?
That's the one I want you to work on right now. Just what are you drinking right now?
Could be.
Yeah,
Where do
if
we
you
find
can't
this?
get it. Okay.
You have to go, you have to
And
go to
post
a
it,
separate page.
post
have to
the
go to
link in chat.
Okay.
It might work better that way.
All righty. That's a good idea, Mary.
I used to like to. No, it hurts. And shakes.
Thanks, Mary.
Yeah.
But the more I put it under, the looser it gets. It's interesting.
I do it on my phone, so I don't get confused with all the different.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
things.
That works. Let's see. How many of y'all are there? Y'all catching on?
We're to a graph.
What? No, yeah, that's.
So I think,
We're cheating and using two machines.
okay, that's fine. You can cheat. I won't turn you in.
What's hot bean water? Is that coffee?
Yes.
Unless it's just hot bean water, in which case we need to talk. You're missing out.
I'm cooking white beans. So when you said hot bean water, I thought, who would ever drink hot bean water?
All of us do. Isn't that strange to think about? A couple more people want to get your answers in there. Okay. No sky juice drinkers.
Is there chai tea on the list? Did that come through or not?
What is chai?
Leaf.
Is it a leaf? Is it what is it? Is
I
it a
don't
leaf?
know.
Mary,
I mean, it's a
Mary
tea.
Thornberry is nodding. It's a leaf. Okay, so you can be hot leaf water.
Yeah,
Hot leaf water.
chai is based on tea, so it's hot leaf water.
Okay, all right. No sky juice drinkers?
Sky juice.
Any guesses?
Water.
Yes. Have you been around a preschooler lately? This is sky juice or rock juice. That's all right, y'all. I'm just an oddball. So I hope that was not too frustrating for you as we move ahead. But the something else, I'm curious, who is drinking something else this morning that you would be bold enough to divulge? Allison, what are you drinking?
Half Gatorade, half water.
Interesting. What flavor Gatorade?
Fruit punch.
Okay, all right. Interesting. Gator water. Anybody else want to divulge there's something else? There's no secret mimosa out there in Covenant class land? Oh, you don't have to answer that. All right. Thank you for indulging my silly game. All right. So from the ridiculous this time to the sublime, we have a scripture that is the basis of the film that we're going to watch this morning. And as has been our process over these last several weeks, I would like for us to read this. If we could have a volunteer to read this out loud, and the rest of us listen for words or phrases that catch our attention. Any volunteers? Somebody to read for us?
I will.
Awesome. Thank you, Jane.
You are the salt of the earth, but if salt has lost its taste, how can its saltiness be restored? It is no longer good for anything, but is thrown out and trampled underfoot. You are the light of the world. A city built on a hill cannot be hid. No one, after lighting a lamp, puts it under the bushel basket, but on the lamppost, and it gives light to all in the house. In the same way, let your light shine before others, so that they may see your good works and give glory to your Father in heaven. Do not think that I've not come to abolish the law or the prophets. I have come not to abolish, but to fulfill. For only I tell you, until heaven and earth pass away, not one letter, not one stroke of a letter will pass from the law until all is the same. Will be called least in the kingdom of heaven, but whoever does them and teaches them will be called great in the kingdom of heaven. For I tell you, unless your righteousness exceeds that of the scribes and the Pharisees, you will never enter the kingdom of heaven.
Thank you so much. Thanks. As you listened, words or phrases, this is probably a familiar one, at least certain words or phrases. So words or phrases that caught your attention as Jane read.
Let your light shine.
Yeah.
Light of the worlds.
Light.
Salt of the earth.
On a hill.
Yeah, city on a hill.
Note, not shining city on a hill. Can I get an amen? Sorry.
yes, you can.
U.S. American religious historian. I get a little bent out of shape on that one.
Kingdom of heaven.
The others. Y'all aren't messing around today. Like, yeah, we got it. All right. I need another volunteer to read again. And again, forgot to remind you of this, but as you're listening, this one is a hard one to do, but pretend like you've not heard this before. Even that you didn't just hear it, but let your mind affix to maybe a different phrase than it did before.
I tell you. You want to try?
Can I get a volunteer? Anybody?
I'll read it, Ann.
Thank you, Cecil.
You are the salt of the earth, but if salt has lost its taste, how can its saltiness be restored? It is no longer good for anything, but is thrown out and trampled underfoot. You are the light of the world. A city built on a hill cannot be hid. No one, after lighting a lamp, puts it under the bushel basket, but on the lampstand, and it gives light to all in the house. In the same way, let your light shine before others, so that they may see your good works and give glory to your Father in heaven. Do not think that I have come to abolish the law or the prophets. I have come not to abolish, but to fulfill. For truly I tell you, until heaven and earth pass away, not one letter, not one stroke of a letter will pass from the law until all is accomplished. Therefore, whoever breaks one of the least of these commandments and teaches others to do the same will be called least in the kingdom of heaven. But whoever does them and teaches them will be called great in the kingdom of heaven. For I tell you, unless your righteousness exceeds that of the scribes and Pharisees, you will never enter the kingdom of heaven.
Okay, same question. Thank you, Cecil. What do you hear?
Let your light shine before others.
Let your light shine before others. Was that Walter?
Yes.
Thank you. Let your light shine before others.
Gives light to all.
Whoever teaches them will be called great in the kingdom of heaven.
Yeah. Others.
I hear it and I think of that song we learned in Hide It Under a Bushel. No, I'm gonna let it shine. So that's where I was.
Great. Yeah.
You know,
Light again. Yeah, Pam.
it sounded scary to me. I mean, it sounded really good in the first two. And then it was, if you're not more righteous than the Pharisees, it's all over for you. I thought, whoa, this is, so it sounded kind of scary at the end.
Mm-hmm.
It sounded admonishing.
For me, I have to say, whoever breaks the least of these commandments and teaches others to do the same will be called least in the kingdom of heaven.
Yes.
I think I just don't hear that part of this. Yeah.
It says at the beginning too, in response to Pam's comment that useless salt is going to be trampled underfoot.
Yeah.
So it's bracketed by a kind of threat.
Is it a challenge to do better?
Challenge.
I was laughing about that no longer good for anything because I was thinking they didn't live in a climate where you put salt down to melt the ice.
Well, here's what I've always wondered about that, Mary. If salt has lost its taste, how can its saltiness be restored? So that really is a question that I have pondered for decades now. How do you re-salt salt? How do you you can't, because if the salt is not salty anymore, there's no way to make it salty. It's really done. It's not what it is anymore. It's not what it was anymore. I don't know. These are things I ponder.
Doctors are always telling you to stop using salt. So
Is it possible for salt to lose its flavor? I don't think it's possible.
Something I've wondered about. Yeah. It becomes something else. It's not salt anymore. Yeah. Any chemists in the house?
It would have to be contaminated to lose its salt taste.
Uh-huh.
I don't know what you contaminate it with, but sand or whatever.
Uh-huh.
Or sin.
Sand or sin. Sounds like a great true crime novel or something. Sand or sin. Well, I think right. Yeah. Dilution is a way that you can destroy the flavor of salt, which is another part of the distinctiveness of salt, that you want it to stand out.
By the same token, you could, if you added enough good salt to the bad salt, you could restore the taste, the saltiness to the whole batch, although it might be diluted a little bit.
Isn't the salt having to do with keeping fish in the sun and from stinking? And I mean, they didn't have refrigerators either. Right. So it's really a symbol, a metaphor, it seems like to me, for making life better or more just. And if you're not more just, life dies. I mean, we cause people to die if we're negligent in keeping justice. Isn't that right? I mean,
it's a preservative. You're right, Charlie. Yeah.
I think that it's more like a Zen koan. I mean, how does one hand clap? It doesn't work. That's what it's trying to say. If you're not obeying God's command or following, put it another way, if you don't want what Jesus was willing to die for.
If you're not embodying that way of being.
Also along the same lines as what Charlie's saying, salt was very precious. It was valuable and is a symbol for being valuable. In fact, I kind of recall that Roman soldiers were paid with salt, hence the word salary. So if you're not worth your salt, you're not being valuable.
I love that. See what y'all are in for? You better read. Okay, this is great. That I never made that connection between salt and salary. Okay, so we're gonna just keep moving along. I'm trying to watch my clock and make sure that we end on time. I don't want to scare any Davidson alumni with this review. This is not a review test. This is a review, like normal people talk about reviews. So over the past 4 weeks, we have talked about these different films and the different elements, cinematic elements of these films. And, we haven't exhausted by any stretch of the imagination the different dimensions that we could discuss of each of the films that we've talked about. I think there are all kinds of ways that we could come back to any of these films. We haven't talked about the titles of the films and how those play into the arguments that these films are making. There's all kinds of just scene by scene dissection that we could do. So I encourage you to maybe go back and look at some of these films again if you can, and try to delve deeper into them. So today we are going to watch a film called The Traveler. You may have seen this one before, but I hope that the way that we're going to approach this film is a little bit different, and it might combine some of the ways that we have approached these other films in the past 3 weeks. So I am going to, I think I've successfully shared my sound with you, and now this is about 4 minutes. You may need to up your volume, but here we go with The Traveler.
They used to call us so many things. Forever travelers, professional liars. But I see a big change coming. Now, we're truth tellers. We're sharing the word to those who never knew it, and to those who forgot how wonderful it's always been.
Our family was on a train. It was the end of a vacation. Everybody was pretty weary. Kids were exhausted, a little bored.
Daddy, can we do the presidents again?
So to pass the time, I started quizzing them with little school-type questions. Can you name the presidents of the United States?
George.
Washington.
John.
Adams.
Now before this, I'd noticed a guy, well, he looked like he'd been trying to make eye contact with me and interact, but we were tired, and he wasn't really trying to do that. And this guy looks over at me and he says, "Are you a Christian man?" And I said, "Yes." And he said, "What kind of a Christian are you?" I wasn't sure how to answer that. So I just said, "Methodist."
Methodist, eh? Well, I'm sorry to hear that.
And I said, "Why are you sorry to hear that?" He said, "Where I come from, the Methodists there, they're not very serious about their faith."
It's a matter of convenience. It doesn't really impact their life.
He began to tell me about who he was. He was a gypsy. I'm not sure I've ever had a conversation with a gypsy before.
If you're a gypsy, it's difficult to be a Christian. We had to leave behind a life the Bible considers sinful.
I said, "Really?" He said, "Oh yes." He said, "The #1 occupation for a gypsy is fortune teller."
I gave it up for something more.
I'd noticed actually before that he was traveling with a little boy. He had a beginning reading book. So I said, "Oh, you're teaching your son to read?" He said, No. He said, "Gypsies don't read."
I have to learn to read. You see, my people for so long haven't been treated so well. And for some time, I've wanted to learn to read the Bible. It gives us comfort. For me, there's no other reason to read. I've learned to hold on to that vigor for what's given you air to breathe. The chance to live the life you're called for.
He wanted to give a witness, I think, to his faith. And I'd been reticent to get involved in it. Wasn't desiring to have that kind of conversation with anybody. I was tired. He brought some energy to me. He brought some life to me. I mean, I'm still talking about it years later. This unexpected encounter with a stranger came down really to just that one question: what kind of a Christian are you?
Okay, if you would like to go back to Menti, there's a word cloud for you to contribute to. It's the same code. I can put it in our chat. Yep. If I can type. Just to type in a word from the scripture passage that you connect to the film.
And mine's taken a long time to refresh.
Mine is too. All I see is the bars.
Yeah.
And I keep pushing refresh, but it doesn't move.
Oh,
Try that. Try it now.
Okay.
Is it going?
Yeah.
What's the code number?
It's in the chat. Do you see your chat on your Zoom screen? 8495404. You got it? Are y'all finding it? Oh.
Can you do 2 words?
Yeah, there's one word and then another one.
You can do, I think you can do 2 or 3. Can you all see the word cloud coming into shape? Neat.
Not
yet.
Not yet.
Enter your email if you want to see the results. That must
Here,
be.
I think I can share. I can share the results with you.
Yeah, that'd be good.
Okay.
You see?
Yeah.
Anybody else want to get in there? Good. 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 Neat. So looks like light is the winner. It's the dominant word. And I pulled out my highlighter when you all were talking before about the passage. That word kept coming up in what several people heard and remembered from the passage. So it's just another way to represent what we're hearing or seeing as we're looking at these different representations of the story or the words that Jesus is saying in Matthew. Anybody want to talk more about light in the film?
There wasn't a lot of it.
Yeah. Can you say more about that? Can you put on your film critic hat?
Wasn't a lot of it in black and white and at night.
Some is in some of there's some archival pictures that are in black and white, and it is, yeah, Bill. This seems to be at night or dawn, dusk. Other comments about light? Yeah.
There was, however, the one shot of the single light on the ceiling.
Yeah.
I saw that when they would pan back, you'd see the busy city and all the lights on the buildings. But then when they were talking, that's when it totally kind of blacked out and you just had the simplicity of no light or not bright light.
Was the gypsy looking for light? Yeah.
Good.
Yeah, he wanted to read the Bible.
Yeah.
But he
Right.
also was the light. I felt that he was the light for the minister.
Uh-huh. Yeah,
Well, it's
really interesting kind of role reversal. Yep, sorry.
it's an enlightening moment for the minister, because when you think about it, the contrast between, as Ginger said, the darkness and the light and the conversation, it brings light to his mind in the middle of the night.
And it even, he says it even brought a little energy to him because they were all wiped out and tired. And this exchange, which he was trying to avoid, brought some, not just kind of spiritual light, but a kind of re-energizing life to him. Yeah, good.
And
Now,
in the film, after talking about he had a little boy with him, you get that close-up shot of the eye.
Yes.
Yeah. Wells for a while, and you feel as though, who's getting their eyes open here? I mean, that sort of metaphor is involved.
Lovely.
well, now we know that Methodism is a convenient religion.
It's pretty hard on old James Howell. It's pretty hard on the old Methodists.
And I want to join the word least with light, because that's sort of the question that the man asks the minister. What kind of Christian are you? Are you a least light or a great light? And so I put those two words together in the context of the film and the kind of semi-dark light in which it was filmed.
Good. Yes. Yeah, the character of light in that film is representing something, I think. Yeah. Any other thoughts about?
I kept, from the
words.
beginning, from The Traveler, I kept thinking about Billy Graham. He went all over the world sharing the light of God with people that had never heard of God in some places. And I just couldn't get my mind off of him doing what this man on the train was talking about.
Jane, I thought somebody was trolling me when I saw Billy Graham show up in the word cloud.
Sometimes I think we live our lights in a gray area. It's not total dark lives. And in a gray area, not total darkness, but certainly not an enlightened life necessarily. When you go through life, it can be very mundane, especially during COVID. It has become.
Yeah. Kind of not very salty. Kind of bland. Yeah. Yeah. And he's in a train. He can't avoid this guy. He's got his family there. He's kind of in this, rolling tin can. And this question comes to him in an unavoidable way. Yeah. Yeah.
I was struck by the fact that the gypsy was willing to give up his job because of his faith. And I worried about what kind of job he's going to get since he can't read. That was a big step for him.
Excuse me. I found it interesting as the train went rapidly by. At the very end, as the last car went by, there was a sucking sound as if we were all being sucked into the train car ourselves.
Nice. Good attention. Well, I would like for us to, let's see, what's the method of my madness here? I would like for us to learn a little bit today in today's filmmaking 101 about long shots. And we've talked with our first film that we watched, Knowing Peanuts. We watched a video about bird's eye view, and bird's eye view and long shots there's a Venn diagram where they can overlap. You can have a long shot that is a bird's eye view, but all long shots are not necessarily bird's eye view. So I'm gonna share my screen again with you, and we are going to watch our favorite film professor again. Get this. There we go. All right. We're just going to watch about a minute of this. So here we go.
Is placed at a great distance from the subject matter, from the focus of the shot, whether it's a person, an object, or a field of vision. We as a viewer are at a deep distance from it. When we're at a distance from something, we see it in its particular context. So long shots are helpful at giving us the entire environment or world of a movie. At the same time, they alienate us potentially from the subject matter in the frame. If you want to make a human look weak in his or her context or in his or her environment, you could use a long shot, or especially an extreme long shot, because when we're at a very long distance from someone, they feel impersonal or even strange. They're strangers. We might not even be able to see their faces. So sometimes extreme long shots are used to show us as being alienated from whoever is in the frame, or in the case of, say, Lawrence of Arabia, with the two characters on the sides of the frame, as here. The character deep in the distance on a horse is a mysterious black rider on the horizon, a total stranger to them, and they're very worried about this black rider. So extreme long shots can show alienation or strangeness. They can show characters being very weak in environments. A great movie that does this well is Stanley Kubrick's masterpiece, Barry Lyndon, where over and over again, to express the naturalism of the movie, that is humans being pawns or animals in their environment, Kubrick uses the extreme long shot to show you the characters. You're at a great distance from them. Sometimes you're up close in their face, but he'll back off or he'll zoom the camera out to show you the character in the environment. And this is kind of an ominous shot for that character. Now, there's long shots that are really just establishment shots. They show you the world you're in, the building you're going to go into, the woods, the field, or just the setting of the story. Long shots used in this way as establishment shots are used to show you where the characters are and what world you're in. Usually establishment shots are used at the beginnings of scenes to give you enough context so you know where you are. Thus, being at a distance from the things in the frame in a movie isn't all that bad. Sometimes it's okay, sometimes it's great, sometimes it's terrible. Totally depends on the context. So you need to look at each long shot, an extreme long shot, within the set of shots it's placed in. Look at the scene, look at what's going on with the characters and the plot, and then you'll be able to figure out what the extreme long shot or the long shot means. And genre will matter. If you're in a horror movie,
stop.
maybe a science fiction, maybe a science fiction movie.
Okay. All right. So with that in mind, I want us to watch the film again, but we're going to kind of do the opposite of what we did last week when we focused on the visuals without the sound in the busker, to pay particular attention to, we listened to the sound and kind of let the visual slide. Today, I'm going to turn the sound off, and I want you to pay attention to the images. And it may be a little bit disconcerting, but I'm hoping that you will maybe notice something that you didn't notice the first time around. So, and try to pay particular attention to these long shots that we just heard about. Okay. Okay, I'm not sharing my sound, so if you don't hear anything, that's completely normal.
Just a little bit. Yeah, I promise we will. Uh,
Whoop. Nope. All right. So I have several questions for us to talk about. Let me share this. And we can ponder these really in any order, but it seems to me like especially with the sound off, that the train becomes a central character to this little film. So I'm interested. Maybe I'm out there, but love to hear your thoughts on this.
When it first starts out, you're looking toward
Let's
the
see,
future.
Jane, I can't hear you, but maybe it's me. Can y'all hear Jane?
Yeah.
You can.
When it starts out, you're looking through this small window in the train and everything is blurry. So to me, that indicates you're not sure of the future. And then further into the movie, when you see the train moving, it's clear and it shows you a clear picture of the future.
Somebody say something. I'm not sure I can hear you.
You turned off your sound for the movie. Does that make any difference?
I can hear you now. Thanks, Pam. Okay. Thanks. Jane, I missed what you so brilliantly said.
I just, when the movie started out, the film, and you looked in the train, everything was foggy and blurry. And then as the train progresses through the film, either in long shots or even close-ups, it's nice and clear, which indicates a better view of the future than when it started.
Interesting. Yeah, good.
And it was always in darkness until the end when the sun was rising in the long shot, so indicating a lot more light.
Mm-hmm. Good.
And one of the first shots, long shots, was an overhead shot, or bird's eye, as you referred to it, and that was a picture of the highway with 2 or 3 cars traveling in separate lanes, and I saw in that the fact that when we travel, we're usually isolated. We're in our own car, we're in our own lane, And then you get to the train, and the train tracks were going in different directions, but you're only going in one direction on one train. And yet inside the train, there became the conversation. So there was no longer that separateness or isolation in travel, like the overhead shots and some of the long view shots showed with the automobiles and the train.
Yeah, there's a real sense of, I remember the first time I saw this film, and I really didn't know where I was, when I was, why I was. It does have at the beginning, and maybe in other places throughout the film, it's a real kind of ominous feeling, solitude, isolation, alienation, maybe even we get at the beginning of the film. Yeah, good.
I kind of thought that when you looked at it and the cars on the highway and the train, people had a place to go, but I don't think the gypsy did. And it made me think of, the people in our inner cities that ride the trains all night as a way of existing and being safe. So that's where my mind was going on that.
Yeah.
And yet he had something to share.
Yeah.
And, if you think of that was his light and he was willing to give it.
The film overturns that expectation that the traveler is going to be the one who needs Howell's help or Howell's family's help. And that's not really what happens.
All along the way, you're seeing flashes of light throughout the ride. And at one point, you saw the Bible, Genesis, which emphasizes God.
Yeah. And the beginning of light.
Yes.
But what's the context between that and the fact that mass killings during World War II, which really were sequencing very closely in there, if you look at it?
Do you remember what happens before we see those photographs? Here's kind of, I'm trying to take you back to the train as a character. So
there was the gypsy telling booth, and then next to it, of course, was the pinball machine, which was an interesting context in itself.
Yeah.
So I struggled with that as to
kind of a funny little.
I was tied together.
Inclusion.
It was very quick.
At one point, right before we see those archival photographs, we're in the tunnel. We're in the train tunnel. And at first we're at normal speed, something normal speed, and then the film speeds up. That is the technical term for it. And we are then confronted with those two images of containment and then mass murder. How is that? Yeah, can we work with that a little bit? What's going on here? What that has to do with what the traveler is telling to James Howell? Or how the film makes us aware of what's going on?
He was also talking about my people and being outcast and persecuted, and the gypsies were one of the groups Hitler targeted.
Yeah.
And maybe it's that we try to speed past that and not confront it directly, which this is. One of the things that struck me is that the only person we see face to face really in the film is James Howell. And he's our narrator, and yet he's very deliberately moving himself into the background in a way. And that does make the train, that I think assists in making the train a major character.
Well, I felt
the quick changes of scenery to speed, to a close-up, to an aerial, the whole film kept you off balance, trying to figure out how to put these individual sites into context. I mean, I just think that was meant to make us upset.
Not,
I was searching.
not to beat a dead horse too much, but I'm still fascinated by the role that the child's eye
Yes.
played in the midst of all that.
Yeah.
Searching.
Searching, Jane says. Yeah. Talk us through don't you mute yourself, John Kirkendall. Talk us through your interest in that shot.
There's several stories being told. There's a lot of movement and activity, and also all of a sudden here is this placid, reflective, receptive eye to take in what's being said, what's being done, all the narratives that come together in this. And it may be the little boy that's with him. We don't know who the person is, but all of a sudden, boom, there you are.
Yeah.
And it stays on it long enough to make things stand still.
Yeah, good. And the child is also not in the dark. The child is in this very light setting that's counter to so much that we've already seen in the dark with the maybe older traveler, the evocation of historical events. And here we have this not the whole face, as Mary points out, but a part of this face. Yeah, it's powerful. So do we identify with that part of that child's face? We seeing ourselves there?
James talked about his children on the train, and the man wanted to teach reading to his child, and I was parenting is hard.
I looked at that child as it made me think of that passage, and I'm not real good with Bible verses, Corinthians 13, where, and then face to face and then seeing clearly. How does that pass? These things I know, but I looked at that child as maybe having more wisdom and seeing more clearly because he was silent and taking in everything he was hearing.
Nice connection. Yeah. And we can be like a child when we're hearing these stories and reading about saltiness and light. Any other thoughts about the train and the long shots of the train? How the train as a character helps to structure this encounter that James Howell talks about?
Well, it was making us continually focus on the what's ahead.
What is ahead?
Well, maybe better understanding. Maybe a clearer picture, maybe I don't know.
More light.
Seeing
more clearly. Thinking about this question that the traveler asks, what kind of Christian are you? Yeah, Mary?
I was fascinated at the end when the train tracks split. And to me, that was an indication that there are choices to be made.
The train is traveling always at night.
Say again, Bob.
The train is traveling at night. It's always night. and there's lights inside the train, which otherwise would be hard to see it. So it is never traveling in daylight. And I assume that's a filmmaker's device.
Except at the end, Bob, where the sun is rising and it's clear.
Yeah.
So, you know, whether those long shots brought you closer to the truth, meaning the light, I don't know.
There is a very effective use of light and dark and shadow and light throughout the film. And if you pay attention, I won't make you watch it again, but again, you know, this one, especially just the work with the train on film, we come into, it's almost as if we're getting on the train with the camera. And at different moments, we see the inside and the outside of the train. Bob's right. Yeah, the lights are on in the train, although the lights in that train are not necessarily comforting, because we get these elements of the interior of the train and of the man on the train. We don't see him. We see the top of his head. We see a reflection of his hand that may or may not be him. So we're still kind of kept uneasy. I can't remember who said that. You kind of disoriented, uncomfortable. And then we go through, yeah.
It also showed 3 seats, 2 of which were the same color and one that was different.
A little off, yeah.
Or maybe somebody on the train is more important than everybody else.
Interesting, yeah. And it's also not like a spanking new train. This is a train that's been around for a while. So kind of, again, that kind of age and weariness, being tired, having seen a lot. Where am I going? What is this about? But then by the end, as several of you have pointed out, we're out of the tunnel and we're headed off into the distance, where it appears, I think, you know, there's an argument to be made that the sun is coming up, that we're headed toward more light, more clarity, now that we've had this experience, this conversation, kind of challenge from this traveler.
At some point, there is a brief shot of a transition between cars. And yes, I'm trying to put into context what that implies.
More thoughts about that? I mean, it's another place where we're confronted with, there's a light and there's darkness.
I think, Dan, too, when you look at that shot, it wasn't a clear shot. You know, there was jiggle to it, like we're transitioning, but it's not going to be easy.
And who used the word disorienting?
Pidge,
yes. There's something cinematically in the cinematography that's happening in that that we get a little destabilized, that there might be a zooming and a moving back at the same time. You know, it's a technique that Alfred Hitchcock liked to use. Vertigo, he does this zooming in and moving the camera physically backwards. I think that's happening in that moment, Van, that is meant to not just notice the door, but it's meant to throw us off balance. Experience seeing being off balance.
Well, it also symbolizes, to a point, the connection between the pastor and the gypsy, because the pastor was not happy to jump into the conversation.
Yeah. So maybe there's a suggestion of, you know, just be ready, people. Life happens.
Well, there's something disoriented about riding on a train for a long period of time. It's the motion, the click clack of the tracks. It's not like commuting like I did when I first was working out in Chicago between the suburbs and downtown, where you knew certain things because you looked out at certain points. But long distance travel on a train is, to my mind, very disorienting.
Especially at night, especially when it's dark. You really can't see anything. Yeah.
And following up on what Mary said earlier about the tracks indicating choices, I think that one thing that I felt when you asked the question about what does the train, what role does it play, what symbolism does it have? And in a way, I mentioned the thing about traveling in solitude. In a way, what went on inside the train was a choice that was made primarily by the gypsy initially, but then he brought in the pastor, and that is the fact that we have a choice as we travel through life to either recognize our fellow travelers who are usually very much in the same boat we're in, or we have the choice of not recognizing them and continuing to travel our own somewhat lonely path.
Yeah. And the ambiguity of the title could apply to the gypsy, and sometimes gypsies are called travelers, but it could just as well apply to James Howell and his family. Yeah, great. We have to stop, y'all. And I sure have enjoyed this. You all get an A. I would give you an A+, but Davidson doesn't give A+. Much too many people's chagrin. But I hope you all will be well and take care and stay safe and get your vaccines. And I will be seeing you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.